Oh, wow.
Зараз почекаємо, що мав це за реєстрацію. Просто не можеш доснімати. Почекаємо, що мав. Чего уж наконец-то? Listen, what time is there in Arizona?
$11 in the morning.
Good morning to you.
Good evening.
Okay, I think we can. I think we can go ahead and start the event. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for attending in person and online our opening event, the Politics and Values of Conservatism. This is the first event, the first part of the so-called conservative caravan titled Conservatism, Amalgamate for the New and the Old. Now, before we begin, I would like to let you know that we will record this event. So if you prefer a bit of anonymity, please go ahead and turn off your cameras. Okay. Let me introduce our panel for tonight. My name is Sasho Markovski. I'm the director of the Sarissa Institute. We have Tamara Mitkovska joining us online. She is the head of the Young Conservatives Club. Next to me is Sasho Petkovski. He's part of the Department for Research and Analysis at the Sarissa Institute. And live from Arizona, we have Jason Miko. He is part of the Department for Political and Ideological Affairs. Now, the Sarissa Institute is a non-government organization whose goal is to create, develop, and promote conservative values and policies. Our aim is to conduct research and analysis, to hold public debates and conferences, and work on projects. Through its conservative thoughts and conservative action, the Institute emphasizes the importance of national identity, historical memories, family values, free market economy, and advocates for a culture that promotes justice and fairness. We also stand for equal rights and freedoms for all citizens, economic prosperity, and a policy of inclusiveness in the international relations. As an organization, we seek a cooperation with similar ideological international organizations, as well as we encourage exchange of opinions and organizing joint events. Now, in short, if you would like to put us in an ideological framework, we belong to the center to right spectrum. One of the reasons why we decided to started this institute is to change the perception of a conservative. Unfortunately, in Macedonian society, people, the conservative meaning has a bit of a derogatory meaning. People who are ideologically conservative are often labeled as uneducated, backwards looking, blindly religious, closed-minded, etc. This actually stems from the ideological background of university professors from the previous system. Until the breakup of Yugoslavia, most university professors were either Communist Party members or collaborators. The Communist Party ideology poured into the academic institutions and suffocated everyone who dared to stray away from the communist doctrine. Now, almost 30 years after the breakup of Yugoslavia, we're still left to deal with the void of proper political science education. Our aim is to fight that reality. Fortunately for us, communism is done and dusted. It has proven to be ineffective, especially in the private sector, in the business, in the economy. Therefore, more and more people are turning conservative. This is where the new generation and younger people come into play. Now, many of us are educated in foreign universities. The borders are open for unrestricted travel. We have developed technology, access to the internet. So people can actually see other ideological options, and they actually realize that the right is often right. Now, restoring the belief in the country and in the government institution is one of our major goals. Unfortunately, we see a decline in levels of trust in the government institutions among the Macedonian citizens. And this goes across all ethnicities, all religions, socioeconomic status. And this decline in confidence in all branches of the government, whether it is the executive, judiciary, or legislative government, whether it's local or central government, elected or government officials. Now, the belief in the institutions is closely connected with the transparency of that government institution. The public simply doesn't trust the government. The majority of the people believe that the government institutions are intentionally or unintentionally withholding important and useful information from them. Now, unfortunately, too many times we hear people say, oh, if you don't have a personal connection in that institution, or if you don't know somebody there, you won't be able to do anything. You won't be able to get the job done. We believe, however, that we can change that perception. Francis Fukuyama, in his book, for example, the State Building, says that in today's world, the only serious source of legitimacy is democracy, and good governance and democracy are not easily separated. A good state institution is one that is transparent and efficient, and it serves its client. In this case, the government's clients are its citizens. Now, if you look at the society as a pyramid, we can place the government on top, receiving its legitimacy and power from the people. And in the middle is civil society. This is where organizations and institutions like ours belong. We act as a liaison between the government and the people. We represent the interests of the citizens, and institutions like ours keeps the government in check. Now, if we work in parallel for increasing the government's transparency and integrity, we can improve the people's confidence into those government institutions. This is where our conservative approach to viewing government is emphasized. We believe in maintaining and improving the pillars of the state. We want to build upon them, not start from the beginning. We want to see competent and just government institutions based on efficiency and integrity. Now, the same is true in international relations. To paraphrase a conservative statesman, Clemens von Metternich, stability within states breeds stability among states. He, for example, viewed the French Revolution as a liberal reform that brought chaos into Europe. He also believed that tradition is what keeps states stable. Tradition is maintained through institutions and nobility, which we can see as present-day government and government executives, for example. He also believed that conservatives are anti-nationalists because nationalism doesn't protect borders. Strong states and unity and cooperation between those states maintains peace and promotes prosperity. Now, he is considered a bit controversial by some people. However, he did actually envision today's European Union. Now, the European Union has established itself as a dominant economic, political, and military power. Its citizens live in stable, developed, rich, democratic countries. Metternich also understood that for a country or a union to be prosperous, fundamental laws must be established. Now, today we can actually see that passing laws, just passing them through the legislative branch of the government is not enough. Those laws must be enforced and respected. Our country needs to be strong in order to join the strongest alliances. And we're here to help the citizens and the government institutions. Now, the premise that conservatism is a backwards ideology and forbids and limits people's thoughts and ideas, luckily has been discredited. If conservatives, for example, believe in family values, then advocating for our families to drink pure water or breathe clean air, then eco-conscious society is surely a conservative issue. Conservatives have also been labeled for far too long as xenophobic, homophobic, radical extremist, and Sarissa is here to prove the opposite. Now today, the conservatives are broad-viewed, open-minded, and modern. Now, speaking of younger conservatives from the younger generation, Tamara Mitkovska, the head of the Young Conservatives Club at the Sarissa Institute, will take over.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me well.
Yes.
Okay. Distinguished guests, respected colleagues, and others present. First of all, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to address this event as the leader of the Club of Young Conservatives that operates within the Institute for Conservative Politics, Sarissa, and to express my satisfaction that I am a part of this institute, which gives me great support for promotion of conservatism among young people. At the beginning, I would like to emphasize that conservatism today is most often associated with forms of everyday life that refer to political, cultural, religious, linguistic, and other forms of social life. That at first glance, even in ordinary slang, conservatism is equated with everything that is restrained and skeptical of abrupt changes, for which conservatives are often called hard or insensitive in their care of others. All these forms over time seem to be brought under the control of the states, with many of them becoming insignificant, their participation in society neglected, and the influence of the church and religious communities weakened or disappearing, which in turn has a destructive effect on certain social goods and lead to the destruction of marriage, family, church, and work as communities. What kind of democracy would we talk about than of excluding tradition and its heritage, setting some kind of advanced progressivism that calls these forms something outdated? The basis of conservatism as an ideology does not hold with theory, but the customs, conventionally and continuity that would preserve human freedom and individual independence. All people in society contribute to that, but the key to their further preservance are, of course, the young people, who should make tradition and democracy inseparable factors in everyday life. The very beginning of the role given to me by the Sarissa Institute, which I gladly accepted, stimulated me to single out the foundations for the development of this ideology among young people, which is set as a thesis in my first column for Conservative Global, which are the 5 pillars most important for the young in order to develop this ideology, i.e. morality, continuity, belonging, effectiveness, and consistency. These 5 pillars can find their role in all forms of social life, including issues related to abortion, faith, and religion, compulsory military service, health, education, and so on. With this classification, on the one hand, there is a separation from the everyday topics that occupy almost all media, which would significantly remove the prejudice that appeared in public due to these issues, and because of which we are often attacked as conservatives. And on the other hand, it is sufficient to emphasize the essence as sustainable in everyday life. This division, in addition to covering all the hot topics that ward the public every day, it imposes answers to a series of additional unresolved questions and views on which, of course, our short-term and long-term future depends. On this occasion, I would like to single out at least 3 of these questions that need to be answered as soon as possible, in which practical formation, the values contained in the 5 pillars are the basis. First is the question of the Orthodox Church. Now, I point this out because I belong to it, and its role in social life and young people and the country in which they live. It is a fact that conservatives are practically believers, and that in Macedonia more and more young people are joining the church. They are part of the church communities and actively participate in the Sunday and holiday liturgies. The Macedonian Orthodox Church at times seems to have more priority issues to resolve, such as the one imposed by the recognition of autocephaly by the sister churches, as opposed to taking a clear, unanimous position on abortion issues or the mandatory introduction of religious education. In the spirit of existence is the spirit of love among people, as well as the care for the poor and how to help them fight hunger, to give them a piece of bread, to provide funds and donations for their treatment, the construction of burnt homes, and so on. These churches' pledges come into conflict with the pledges of young conservative beliefs through promoting moral values, which means helping the poor find a job with a regular and decent salary, which will allow them to help themselves, which of course requires support not only from the church, but also from the state. In its priorities, the spiritual leadership of the Macedonian Orthodox Church nor unanimously gives clear support on issues that have opened up about the identity of its people and state, nor does it engage in public debates with concrete proposals and solutions. In contrast, she remains a silent observer of how these processes shift from national to political. The second question I emphasize, although it requires support from the church, still is quite current, is the issue of abortion. In order to reach an appropriate answer to this question, because it's really delicate and it attacks life, a clear distinction must be made between the term crime and the term law, which is increasingly imposed as an excuse under the influence of legislation and health care. Under the influence, the term human rights is being redefined globally. Under such influence and under the sign of fulfillment of the right of the mother, she directly attacks the right of the weaker, i.e. the child, the conception. But today, there are already signs of awakening among young people who increasingly realize that life begins at conception, and this must be clearly made known to the promoters of this redefinition, for which I believe that the voice of the supporters in the region of Southeast Europe and in my country will be raised against abortion, which will significantly influence the change of the decisions on this issue made under the pressure of the organizations that propagate abortion. Third and last is the issue related to political parties. Here, first of all, I like to point out the right-wing parties in my country that do not make a clear ratio in their order, declaring themselves as part of a conservative political bloc. In that regard, I emphasize that the right-wing orientation is incompatible with conservative ideologies in terms of their action. Without going into highlighting all of the individual parties, I want to emphasize their destructive actions on important national issues and their passiveness in resolving those issues. Some of these political parties participate mainly in left-wing governments, while others in the oppositional bloc, mainly both, in the absence of unifying spirit when it comes to defending tradition and national values as part of the identity of their people. In all that confusion and dilemma in the self-determination of rightist conservatives, the strong view of us, the young conservatives, should come to light. We should expose that whole artificial classification with more active participation in the political and social life through newly formed associations and organizations. We should clearly promote conservative ideological views, which will become a factor of perseverance and solution in the country, as opposed to a break factor of certain processes, which ultimately large political actors might see this as a threat, as opposed to a positive step in their daily political actions. Distinguished guests, on this occasion, with a few messages, I want to emphasize that we, the young conservatives, want to impose the ideological principle in reality. We do not want to leave our countries because it belongs to our ancestors. We want to be, not to have. We look at this world with love. Human dignity is imperative for us. In that way, through effective love, we can change the world. We must restore to the people the lost trust in the institutions, to restore the appreciation of their work through which they raise their families. Young people must be actors, not just silent observers left out and marginalized. Therefore, we must be active, emancipated, involved, and recognized, affirmative, consistent, constructive, eloquent, to stand for something, not against something. Почитувани присутни, Во оваа прилика сакам да упатам покана до сите млади до 27 години кои сметаат дека своите животни ставови ги темелат на овие конзервативни принципи. Имаат желба да се приклучат и да дадат свој придонес во клубот на млади конзервативци. Тоа може да го направат преку Facebook страната на институтот или на мејлот info@sarissa.mk. Ви благодарам многу.
Okay, now we're going to have Sasho Petkovski, and he will speak in Macedonian. He's the only one from the panel who's speaking Macedonian.
Здраво на сите, јас се зборувам на македонски. И ќе збориме за модерниот конзервативизам и неговата имплементација во општеството. Конзерватизмот е политичка и социјална философија која ги промовира традиционалните вредности на културата и општеството. Терминот го измислил во 1818 Франсуа Рене. Тој опишувал ситуацијата во време на владењето на Бурбоните, потребата за да се врати старото уредување уште на Француската револуција. Социјалниот конзерватизам е огромна тема, затоа ќе денес ќе зборуваме на кратко, бидејќи тој нема конкретно значење, не е идеологија што формира лево или десно, меѓутоа се базира на традиционалните вредности. Столбовите на конзерватизмот се слобода, семејство, духовност и традиција. Човекот првоосновно мора да биде слободен. Тој мора слободно да се изразува и да мисли. После следно мора да има верба, без разлика каква е неговата религија, не треба да има предрасуди, сите религии заедно може да се темелат на тие, всушност се темелат на тие традиционални вредности. Следно е семејството. Семејството е една институција. Семејството е една институција која што нас ни дава потпора. Човекот без семејство е многу послаб и му треба потпора во неговото секојдневие за да се изгради како потврста особа. И четвртата, последна столб во конзервативизмот на кој што се темели, е столбот на традицијата. Тоа е еден природен процес кој што тој процес ние го креираме. Тоа е според нас дистинскиот пат кој што се темели пат на морални вредности и негување на традицијата. Тука ќе го цитирам и Фредерик Таглас, кој што кажал границите на тиранот се зацртани од издржливоста на тие кои што се опресирани од него. Значи, ние доколку негуваме традицијата, тогаш ние знаеме кои сме, каде одиме и кој е нашиот пат. Така да никој не може да ни наметне туѓи и неморални вредности. Следејќи и овие принципи на духовна слобода, здраво семејство, негување на традицијата, човекот е силен. Полн со љубов, знае што има, знае каде припаѓа и знае да прави разлика помеѓу доброто и лошото. Кога што кажавме низ историјата, при појавата на конзервативизмот, се употребувале многу радикални методи. Луѓето сметале дека за да зачуваат традицијата, треба да бидат негативно настроени кон било какви промени. Тие промени вклучувале дури и омраза према луѓе од различни религии, луѓе со различна боја на кожа или луѓе од друг етникум. Меѓутоа, овие елементи не се појавиле заедно со конзервативизмот. Тие радикални елементи постојат како негативни особини што кога постои човекот и тие не се составен дел од конзервативизмот. Значи, модерниот конзервативизм ги отфрла сите тие, да ги кажеме, канцерогени елементи кои што не се дел од конзервативизмот. Денеска живееме во едно модерно општество кај што имаме изобилие од информации, секој човек може доколку сака да се едукира и да види како тој да постигне да негува традицијата без да има омраза кон тие што се, да кажеме, некој начин различни од него, меѓутоа ги почитуваат истите вредности. Да напомена, традицијата не се зачува со омраза и страх од новото, туку со взаемна почит и негување на традицијата, како и распознавање на доброто и лошото. Секој радикализам е штетен за општеството и е непросперитетен. тука сакам да го цитирам Айзенхауер, кој рекол дека екстремностите кои доаѓаат дали од лево или од десно или од било кој политички правец, тие секогаш ќе бидат погрешни. Доколку не се грижиме ние за самите себе, учејќи нашите деца на вистински вредности, тогаш никој не може да ни наметне вредности кои го разјадуваат нашето општество. Кога се почитува традицијата на една земја, секој конзервативец е еднаков, без разлика на неговата боја на кожа, без разлика дали е мигрант или локалец, или пак има различни духовни разбирања од нас. Се додека сите ние заедно ја негуваме традицијата на нашето општество, сите ние сме добри конзервативци. Модерниот конзервативизам строго ги отфрла расизмот и шовинизмот и цели промучење на вистински вредности, кои би ни помогнале заедно да оформиме здрави генерации, кои ќе продолжат да се грижат за човештвото, во која неморалот нема да има место. Како конзервативизмот, модерниот конзервативизам, треба да се имплементира во општеството. Прва и основна работа е преку едукација. Треба да постојат граѓански организации кои што би се занимавале со едукација на, да кажеме, на населението, кои што пак преку семејството ќе ги едуцираат своите деца кои што нели се или генерација. Треба да се стави акцент на тоа што битното е да се спречи прелот на младите луѓе кон радикални структури кои во секој поглед се токсични за нашето модерно и развиено општество. Значи, таа едукација исто така треба да започне први од дома, преку своите родители и да продолжи со, нели, како што кажавме, граѓански организации и активности кои што би го помогнале развојот на едукацијата и на таа не треба да биде задолжително, за да се одбегне одбивност од младите генерации. Главната борба која што треба во денешницата да имаат конзервативците е своето присуство во медиумите, кои за жал денеска повеќе од 90% нели како главни креатори на мислата помеѓу масата се либерални структури, кои што шират пропаганда преку своите медиуми за неморал и така тие ги трујат младите генерации и креираат слаби луѓе кои што не негуваат традиција, шират омраза, што нормално е штетно за нашето општество. Со ова не сакам да кажам дека конзервативците треба 100% да ги превземат медиумите, не се живееме во демократија и тие воопшто не треба да се сведат на минимум или пак да се забранат, бидејќи тоа е лош пример и несвојствен за демократијата. И така би се создала алатка со која што луѓето би ја користеле против конзервативците, представувајќи ги како тоталитаристи кои угнетуваат слободата. Но да не забораваме дека слобода не значи право на одредени структури да манипулираат со јавноста, наведувајќи ги кон неморал. Во минатото, конзервативните струи, за да зачуваат традицијата, користеле многу строги методи, кои што денес по широката јавност се нарекувани фашистички. И тоа е една лузна која денес левичарите ја префрлаат за да ги отцрнат традиционалните структури како би изгубиле довербата во луѓето. Како што пред да напоменав, модерниот конзервативец ги отфрла сите радикални и токсични елементи од општеството. Денес конзервативецот ја почитува слободата на говорот, ги презентира своите вредности и остава народот сам да одлучи кој пат ќе го превземе. Во случајов народот се разбира го избира конзервативниот пат како правило. По Втората светска војна левичарството земало огромен замав на грбот на лошото минато на десницарите и тоа го искористиле за да придобијат пошироката јавност, која целела кон прогресивност и креирала фобија кон конзервативни тоталитаристички режими. Но левичарите го доживеа со оцените на своите лажни, да кажеме, прогресивни, а воени неморални пропаганди. Но денес конзервативците се променија во модерни прогресивни луѓе, кои што се грижат за зачувување на традицијата на миролюбив начин, без предразсуди. Сето тоа придонесува обичниот граѓанин да направи споредба на двете доктрини, каде од ден за ден бројката на тие кои што ги избираат модерниот конзервативизам е се поголема. Тука настапува стравот на лажните либерали, бидејќи го предвидуваат нивниот пат. Тие користат денеска целата своја машинерија преку медиумите и преку други алатки за отфрлање, негирање, оцрнување и тотално уништување на конзервативците и сите тие други кои што ги негуваат традиционалните вредности, наметнувајќи се себе си како единствен пат по кој што треба да се движи општеството. Таквите фашистички за мене постапки го откриваат вистинското лице на модерниот левичар, кој сака да креира генерација од недуховни, нестабилни и неморални луѓе, како лесно би ги контролирала. Како што би рекол Авраам Линколн, Америка никогаш нема да биде уништена однатвор, доколку некогаш се случи да изгубиме нашата слобода, тоа ќе се случи само ако ние самите се уништиме. Модерниот конзервативец делува позитивно, креирајќи стабилни луѓе, стабилни семејства со силна духовна верба, кои знаат да ги ценат и негуваат моралните вредности. Таквите луѓе се силни и таквите генерации произведуваат силни и морални вредности, како и морални лидери кои што ќе се грижат за создавање на една силна држава која е способна да се грижи за сите оние кои што живеат во неа. И за крај ќе цитирам Винстон Черчил, кој што кажа: човек на своји млади години, ако не бил радикален, тогаш тој нема срце, но меѓутоа тој во своето полнолетство, ако не станал конзервативен, тогаш тој нема мозок. Ви благодарам.
Okay, and I think it's time for last speaker, Jason Miko, live from Arizona. Take it over, Jason.
All right. Hvala mnogo, Sasho, I pozdrav za mi prijatelji. First of all, let me just say thank you to the Institute for Conservative Politics, Sarissa, for organizing this event tonight. Thank you also to the creators of Sarissa for creating this Macedonian conservative center-right think tank. I have long talked with friends and thought about this, about the idea of creating a conservative think tank in Macedonia, and you guys have done it, so congratulations, kudos to you. I wish you much success. Thank you also to my fellow speakers this evening. I just echo everything that they have said. I hope that what I have to say complements that. And Sasho, thank you again for reaching out to me a couple of months ago to ask me to be a part of this and to contribute columns to Sarissa. I've heard a lot of things from the other speakers that I'm going to talk about, but the first thing I want to talk about is what does it mean to be a conservative? And I think it really depends, first of all, on what it is you want to conserve. So for me, as an American conservative, what do I want to conserve? I want to conserve the Constitution of the United States of America. I want to conserve the founding principles that the founding fathers created. How about a British conservative? What does a British conservative want to conserve? A British conservative might want to conserve their own constitution, which is not actually a written document, but it goes back in history to Magna Carta in 1215 and then to the Glorious Revolution and the Bill of Rights. What does a Macedonian conservative want to conserve? Well, having been involved now in Macedonia for almost 25 years, I would submit to you that a Macedonian conservative, first and foremost, wants to conserve the Macedonian state as an independent, sovereign nation state. I would submit to you that the Macedonian conservative wants to conserve the Macedonian identity and the Macedonian language, Macedonian history and heritage and tradition and all of these things. So first, it depends on what you want to conserve. But then there are some universal attributes or characteristics or canons that apply to conservatives, to the American conservative, to the British conservative, to the Macedonian conservative. Here's what William F. Buckley, the founder of National Review magazine, said. National Review magazine, for those that don't know, is a very influential conservative magazine in America and around the world. And Buckley was actually reluctant to be pigeonholed into defining conservatism, but he gave his own example as a life, and he said this. He said he wanted to live my life an obedient man, but obedient to God, subservient to the wisdom of my ancestors, never to the authority of political truths arrived at yesterday at the voting booth. Another conservative from the last century, Russell Kirk, an American writer and author, talked a lot about what he called, quote, the permanent things, unquote. And in The Conservative Mind in 1953, he tried to define it this way. He said, "It is the preservation of the ancient moral traditions of humanity. And it was also the respect for wisdom of our ancestors." And then, of course, no less than Abraham Lincoln, America's 16th president, defined it this way. He said, "What is conservatism?" Then he answered the question, "Is it not adherence to the old and tried against the new and the untried?" So I thought perhaps tonight I could talk a little bit about some of those universal characteristics and attributes, canons, as Russell Kirk called them. I thought perhaps we could talk about the importance of limits and rules and boundaries in our own lives as individuals, or in the lives of nation states, in governments, in the mediating institutions between government and individuals or families. I thought perhaps we could talk about the importance of wisdom and the old ways and tradition and drinking deeply from those wells. And then I thought perhaps we could talk about an understanding that mankind has fallen, that we are all part of the crooked timber of humanity, as Kant said, and that there is no perfectibility of mankind because human nature is immutable. It is unchanging. But then I thought, well, we've only got a few minutes, and that's an awful lot. That's a big laundry list, and there's much more to it than that. So I thought, why don't we start at the beginning? Why don't we start with what I think is a foundational attribute to conservative thinking, that everything else flows from that. And that one thing is this: it's gratitude. Now, being grateful might seem like a strange way to talk about conservatism, but as we dig deeper into it, I hope it becomes abundantly clear. Think about it. When you're thankful for what you have, you want to protect it and conserve it because you cherish it. Yuval Levin is a thinker and a writer here in the United States that has greatly influenced my own thinking and my own journey. He is the Vice President of Ethics and Public Policy at the Public Policy Center in Washington, D.C. Here's what he writes about conservatism and gratitude. He says, quote, "To my mind, conservatism is gratitude. Conservatives tend to begin from gratitude for what is good and what works in our society, and then strive to build on it, while liberals tend to begin from outrage at what is bad and broken, and they seek to uproot it." Levin notes that conservatives start with gratitude because, quote, "We have modest expectation of human affairs, and we know that people are imperfect, fallen, and weak, that human knowledge and power are not all that they are cracked up to be," unquote. And he says that because we have modest expectations, we are impressed by institutions that have been built from such imperfect raw material, meaning us, and we want to build on them instead of starting from scratch. He notes that conservatives are more thankful for successes in society because more than we're outraged by failures, because we understand, again, the fallen nature of humankind. Unlike some of our friends on the left, we don't believe in starting from year zero all the time. Now, Levin compares this thinking with our friends on the left, and he says, quote, "Liberals often begin from outrage because they have much higher expectations, maybe even utopian expectations." And it's important to remember that utopia literally means no place. So he says maybe even utopian expectations about the perfectibility of human things and the potential of human knowledge and power. They're, meaning he's quoting liberals here, they're often willing to ignore tradition, a word we've heard tonight, ignore tradition and push aside institutions that channel generations of wisdom because they think we can do better on our own, unquote. And then in his many writings, this is a great summary, I think, for Yuval Levin. He says, "An appreciation of and gratitude for what works in society, and an inclination to address our failures by building on what works rather than starting over, give conservatives a high regard for long-standing social institutions, those that have been valued by generations of people dealing with the same kind of basic human problems we have now. It is a key reason why conservatives are traditionalists, inclined to be protective of established ways." Now, as I read some of his quotes there, did you notice some of those things that he mentioned there that we talked about earlier, some of the universal attributes and characteristics, the canons of conservative thinking? He talked about building, not tearing down. He talked about the importance of tradition, wisdom, and the thinking of generations who have gone before us. He talked about a knowledge and understanding that we humans are imperfect and fallen, and an understanding that humans have limitations. Now, here's a very interesting thing about gratitude. The opposite of gratitude is not ingratitude. It is resentment and it is entitlement. Because when you start taking things for granted, you're less likely to defend them, you're less likely to conserve them, and you're less likely to cherish them. And then they become susceptible to corruption and decay. and then envy and greed set in, followed by resentment and entitlement. This is why, to my mind, gratitude is bedrock, it's a foundation of all conservative thinking. So let me relate this now back to the Macedonian conservative. To my mind, the Macedonian conservative is the man or woman who was grateful for the fact that Macedonia exists in the first place and that it was created and achieved after centuries of striving. The Macedonian conservative is thankful for the traditions and things that make Macedonia unique. The Macedonian conservative is indebted to those Macedonian men and those Macedonian women who have gone before, sacrificing, even sometimes sacrificing their lives. And the Macedonian conservative has gratitude for the culture, the history, the language, and the heritage of Macedonia. And in all of these things, the Macedonian conservative wants to hold on to these things and cherish them because they are worthy of praise and protection. Now, here's something fascinating, I think, about gratitude. And you might call it bonus points for you as an individual, for your family, for your friends, for those around you, for your neighborhood, and even for your country. And that's this. It's impossible to be happy if you are ungrateful. National radio host, author, writer, and conservative Orthodox Jew Dennis Prager writes a book on happiness, and he says this, quote, "Yes, there is a secret to happiness, and it is gratitude. All happy people are grateful, and ungrateful people cannot be happy. We tend to think that it is being unhappy that leads people to complain, but it is truer to say that it is complaining that leads people to becoming unhappy. Become grateful and you will become a much happier person," unquote. Again, a grateful person is by definition happy. John Gabriel is the editor-in-chief of Ricochet, which is a conservative media digital platform. He also writes a column for the Arizona Republic. He lives up in the Phoenix area, and the Arizona Republic is the largest newspaper in the state of Arizona. And last year, he wrote a column about this time in advance of Thanksgiving, and we celebrate Thanksgiving here next week. And he wrote this: "An attitude of thankfulness is a choice free to everyone, even to those plagued with peace, relative prosperity, and the latest iPhone. It's easier in the short term to whine, but it makes for a downright miserable life, not only for ourselves, but for the dwindling number of people who surround us," unquote. Again, be grateful and you will be happy. Be ungrateful and you cannot be happy. Remember, a grateful people build up and ungrateful people tear down. Let me close now by quoting Kirsti Misirkov from his short book on Macedonian matters. And I would be remiss if I didn't note that his birthday was yesterday, born in 1874. Now, I don't know if Misirkov was from the left, right, center, or somewhere else, but what he wrote, I think, is very important. And here's what he writes on Macedonian matters. Quote, "Complete political freedom is worthless if a man does not come to realize that his human debt, his debt towards his country and his people, is work, work, and more work. I hope it will not be held against me that I, as a Macedonian, place the interests of my country before all. I'm a Macedonian. I have a Macedonian's consciousness. And so I have my own Macedonian view of the past, present, and future of my country. Gratitude, the act of being grateful, takes work, work, and more work. The good news is that the more you are grateful, the more you work at it, the easier it becomes because it is habit forming, and it is a good habit. But again, in this, you have a free choice. You can choose an attitude of gratitude and thankfulness or not. It is your choice. So let me encourage you to work at forming an attitude of gratitude. It's good for you, it's good for your family, it's good for your friends, your neighbors, it's good for your country. And I believe it is foundational to conservative thinking and beliefs, which I believe are the best way to order society and allow for the flourishing of individuals and families. And I, for one, am grateful for this opportunity to speak to you. Thank you.
Okay. Let's see if there are any questions in the audience here and online.
Okay, so I have two questions. The first one, have you managed to measure the response of the public? So what are their reactions? And second is, it is the beginning. What are your plans for the future?
Okay, so First of all, I'll start by asking your second question. Yes, this is the first of the so-called conservative caravan. We have still in the works a second event, most likely in Kostivar in January. Then we plan on maybe another event and in a different city, and then a fourth event finishing in Skopje. So we're looking at a timeline of January, February, March, most likely. The first part of your question, we have a great response from, especially on social media. And our website, people are actually drawn for different reasons, with who I guess are sharing a conservative view towards different issues, whether it's somebody like myself who has a conservative view towards government roles, institutions of the state, etc. But on the other hand, when it comes to social issues, personally, I tend to be more liberal. And on the other hand, we have young people who tend to have different opinions. And but overall, we're talking about, again, different types of conservatism, drawing different types of group towards the institute. But to answer your question in a short sentence, yes, the response has been great from the public. We have something here. So we have a question online, and I'm not sure who is it for, but it says, how does a true conservative contribute to society as an individual? It's actually a great question that I don't know, maybe Jason has a better answer, but for me, I can say that just like there's different types of the political spectrum who adopt conservative ideology, they tend to work differently on individual level. Conservatism tends to promote individuals and individual rights and freedoms, and people are free to do as they please in being conservatives. Jason, do you want to take over?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So the question again is, how does a true conservative contribute to society as an individual? Great question. And I think that's across the board, whether you're a conservative in America, a conservative in the United Kingdom, or a conservative in Macedonia or anywhere else. And I think first and foremost, it is by living life as a conservative, adhering to those principles that some of our speakers have talked about. It is gratitude, obviously, being grateful for the things that we have, those that have come before us and have built what we have. It is building on society, building on the good things that we have instead of tearing them down. It is also, I would add, learning, as we're doing tonight, learning about what it means to be a conservative. I mean, let me just give an example from my own life, and that is, I am a member of the Republican Party, but I'm a conservative long before I'm a member of the Republican Party. And this is something that has taken me all my life to learn. And of course, I'm not dead yet, so I've still got time to learn what it means to be a conservative and digging deep, drinking deeply from the well of conservative thought. So I would encourage folks, and perhaps this is something for the website as well, a reading list of conservative thinkers and writers that people could go to. I know that reading is kind of out of style these days and not fashionable, but I would encourage you to read. As you can see behind me, this is just a small portion of my book collection. And I like books, not ebooks. I'm old-fashioned in that way. But I guarantee you that once you start reading and getting into this, you'll retain it a lot much more, and you'll understand it. So that's a long answer to the question, but it's many things. But I think first and foremost, again, it is living your life as a conservative at home with your family, amongst your friends, amongst your neighbors, and also it is building up, not tearing down.
Okay. Let's see if there's any question online. Can't see anything. So we have another question. How to deal with all modern challenges, especially the liberal ones? Somebody wants? Okay. You can have Sasha take over this answer.
Може да го повторите на решението? How to deal with all modern challenges.
Especially the liberal ones.
Може единствената. Так, само тоа може да се случи преку едукација на семејствата, како и на младината, и како креирање на такви граѓански здруженија, како што би во мојот говор го кажав, кој што ќе се грижи за едукација на младите генерации, кои што ќе ги промовираат своите морални вредности и ќе ги отфрлат нивните либерални вредности, кои што се во случајот неморални. Мислам да сте тоа.
Anybody else want to add on that?
If I can just add, I think one of the things that we conservatives often fail to do, and especially in the age of hyperactive social media, and I'm guilty of this myself, is that we tend to just talk about we don't try and persuade. I think we should be in the business of persuading. We have, I believe, all of the arguments on our side about what leads to the proper ordering and flourishing of society. So I think we need to really work on persuading our friends, our family, even total strangers, as to why conservative thinking and these conservative attributes and characteristics, why those are best for a society and why they work better than what our friends on the left think.
Okay. Have another question coming online, and it's where is the place of conservatism in the future society? So I'm guessing where does conservatism lead, or where can we find conservatism in the future?
Or perhaps what maybe this is from Igor, I believe.
Yeah.
How do you see it in the future? I think conservatism has a very good place in society, whether it's in Macedonian society or American society or British society or anywhere else. Because again, as I said a moment ago, I think we've got the arguments on our side as to why conservative thinking, conservative values is the best thing for the proper ordering and flourishing of society. I mean, we believe some of the things that folks touched on, limited government and free market capitalism, the role of families, the role of civil society properly understood. Civil society, so you got government on one end and you got the family on the other end, and everything in between, the mediating institutions are civil society. And the proper functioning of those societies is what leads to a proper ordering of society and helps us as individuals and as families. I hope that makes some sense.
Yes. Also, I think it's a pretty broad question to answer, especially because, like Jason said, there's a difference between an American conservative, a British conservative, Macedonian conservative. So on a positive note, we see different opinions, different ideas from different from different specters of political framework, if you want to put it, it's not going to be the same. Just like conservatism, conservative people were not the same 50 years ago or 500 years ago. They're not going to be the same in the future. And this is it's a challenge for conservatives, especially conservative philosophers or people from the political sciences. What do they believe in? Because the conservatives tend to get their power from the people. The ideas about conservatism comes from the people, not like with the leftist ideology, where you have the ideology and moving the people towards that idea. Conservatives tend to find their ideas among the people. So for some people, again, they can apply their conservative beliefs towards, for example, how do they view the government or military or the police or social issues, and accept ideas, conservative ideas for different aspects of society. They don't. It's not a cookie cutter. You don't have one type of conservative and that's it. You can see that especially in the U.S. where some people tend to be more conservative. For example, fiscal conservatives and very social liberals, or you have somebody who's very truly conservative from beginning to the end. And so it's not a cookie cutter. It's everybody tends to have their own spin on it, especially since conservatives tend to value individuals.
Yeah, let me touch on one thing. Tamara mentioned it earlier about the Macedonian Orthodox Church, and I'm actually also a member of the Macedonian Orthodox Church. So we talk about conserving different things in society, in different societies, and in Macedonia, it's conserving the Macedonian Orthodox Church, and I'm encouraged to see that young people are becoming more involved in that. Faith in society, in any society, plays a very important role. And in a free society, people should be able to choose to adopt different faiths or no faith at all. That's fine as well. But those, for instance, here in America, there is a certain percentage of the elite that would like to see faith eradicated completely from society. The funny thing is about that is that if you eradicate it from society, it will be replaced by something else, which has faith-like qualities. Secular humanism is almost a religion these days, wherever you go, mainly in the West. Here's an interesting quote. So Douglas Murray is a British author that I very much admire. And he is an atheist. And he says that the challenge facing the West today is that within the West, there is this God-shaped hole, and people are trying to fill it with things other than God, but it needs to be filled with God, with faith. And again, he's an atheist. So, the importance of faith in society and the importance of allowing people to practice their faith or no faith at all. But to that small percentage of our friends on the left that are trying to completely eradicate it, well, you can't have that. And so back to some of the questions that were asked earlier about the modern challenges and the place of conservatism and future in society, I think one of those then would be buttressing the ability to practice our own faith.
Okay. Yes. Any other questions? See. Okay, then I would like to thank everyone for attending this event, and hopefully we'll see you at the next one.
Great.
Have a good
Thank
night.
you.